Why, hello there, sir.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm fine, thanks. Thank you for the added 5 minutes. Traffic was a little bit crazy.
No worries. Out and about this morning?
What's that? Yeah, a little bit of a more about than out. I guess I don't know. So listen, you piqued my interest on several fronts with your comments.
Several fronts.
Yes, several fronts.
Okay. So I was just thinking to myself as I was reading, hold on, I want to, this thing went full screen. Oh, there we go. I just want to turn you up so I can hear you better. There we go.
All right.
So first of all, I I don't want to sound like the old man that I am, but it was almost comical listening to the conversation. Hey, can you just tell me what the problem is so I could just write some AI program and go make some money? Like,
Well, it's interesting. What's encouraging about what's encouraging, and there's a twist on this, but what's encouraging about him reaching out is usually they come out and say, "We've got this great solution. We figured it all out."
yeah.
And he came out and said, "I don't have all the facts
Yeah,
about what we should be solving." And that was the thing that piqued my interest
yeah,
because you rarely get someone, especially in the new generation, saying, I don't have the answer.
yeah. It was the app generation, as you sort of pointed out. So what I was actually thinking, I mean, everything that you said, obviously was spot on and wonderful. With the caveat, though, that I wanted to talk about was that not all of the problems or all the fixes actually do. You can have a business impact without changing process.
Yeah. That's
And sometimes organizations aren't ready for process change, yet you can still bring them better, more, or make what they're doing more efficient or effective today. So when in my last SCRM experience, we sort of had three, and this is where I think it might be interesting for this gentleman. We had three different adoption scenarios. Adoption scenario one was a large enterprise organization that had made a decision that they wanted to transform the way that they did risk management.
right.
They were looking for a solution to help them to enable that transformation. That then has all of the characteristics that you were talking about. Scenario two is a enterprise organization that has, I'd say, a small handful of individuals or change agents that know that they want to go through a transformation, yet they have not been able to build organizational consensus or buy-in, or they don't have enough political power to make it happen.
They're not at that point of desperation or critical mass, is what you're saying.
Yes. And how we approached it with them, actually, very interestingly, is we'll start with scenario three first and then come back to scenario two. Scenario three is a smaller organization that has very little process at all today, really doesn't have any appetite for creating new process, yet they know that they can do what they're doing today more effectively or efficiently.
Right.
And so what we did, so if we started scenario three, working with these mid-sized enterprises who weren't really process heavy, is we provided them a better content solution. So we enabled them through AI to collect more and better risk insight information so that they could react better and faster. We didn't help them to do it more effectively internally or to create better process to standardize mitigation and all that process change, but we were able to improve their ability to detect and the speed at which they're able to react to challenges. So
See, I
that's
love
a
that.
business case and
It's
an
the grow
ROI for it.
it's the grow where you're planted. You met
Yeah.
where they were at. In other words, you weren't coming in with a monolithic approach and say one size fits all. We understand the limitations, so let's make you successful within the framework or boundaries of what your capabilities are.
Yeah. So your ultimate ROI is probably somewhere up here, but we can
Right.
take you here.
Right.
And for them, that's all they really had the appetite or the wherewithal for, and the budget, perhaps.
Yep.
And then you could then take that scenario, though, and apply it to adoption scenario 2, which is I'm at a large enterprise and I'm a change agent. I need to build, I got to pay for all of my transformational effort as I go. And not only that, I need to prove to the other stakeholders that the journey I'm taking them on actually works and has an impact. Yeah, so we would use that same approach for adoption scenario 2. Then the change agent would go in and say, see, I told you so. We're 45 days in. We've already done this, this, and this better than we ever could have. Imagine if we take these next steps in the journey.
So it's almost like, and I'll use the old flywheel analogy of Collins, is you got the doom loop where you try to do it big and doesn't go anywhere, or you do the flywheel which you build up slow traction and gain momentum. That's really that's really that. So what you're doing with the first instance, scenario number 3, is you're recognizing the limitations and helping grow within their capabilities. With number 2, you're saying, I realize there's a much bigger picture here, but success comes in the little victories.
It's and the victories related to the way that you're describing it is I can get victories without doing a lot of process.
Yes.
I can do technology and people, and then I could do the process later.
Right.
So thinking about that, though, that does mean, though, that there are challenges that maybe can be solved with AI, thinking like, go through my contract repository and tell me what are the best ways for me to negotiate this clause that would probably be more effective and more efficient than what they're doing today without necessarily changing the process. So there probably are a bunch of use cases out there that aren't transformational, require the big P, but would still have an impact. And I don't know if that kind of a scenario might be more interesting or a starting point for someone with that sort of app mindset.
Well, you know, what you've described are really the 3 personas of a client.
Yeah.
The ones who realize that the meteor is on its way, whistling right towards them, and they've got to do something.
Yeah.
And they have the will and the capability and the buy-in already to do the change. Then you have the middle ground, where you have people who recognize that some changes have to be made, but you can't eat an elephant in one bite. You got to do it one at a time.
Yeah.
And the third point thing is, why change the nature of the business when we can help the business be more successful within its own framework and boundaries? That's the way I see the personas. Do I got it?
Yeah, it's that's right. With the recognition that the process piece is really the most important piece of those personas. Right. What is the appetite for process change? Because as you pointedly, what you got to at the crux was that's the part that's so hard to do and to get the buy-in. And then that's where the alignment with the technology has to come in and all that sort of organizational buy-in and leadership is needed. So I think really it comes down to the crux around process.
I like what you're saying, because what ultimately it ties into is you become a problem solver, not a solution peddler. In other words, you're not going in there and saying, you have to do this and force feeding it. You're not going in and trying to change everything all at once. Like Rome wasn't built in a day. What you're doing is you're saying, what are the problems? How can I practically solve them at this point in time where they are? Ongoing progress. You see, it's almost like, how do you say it? What you're talking about is talking about a progressive engagement that again doesn't force everyone to comply with one way of doing it. Okay, this is how you make beef Wellington. You got to do it.
Yeah.
And somebody says, I don't have beef. Could I wrap it in hamburger? I know that's overly simplified, but it could be just as satisfying with hamburger as it is with beef or chicken or anything else. So what you're doing is you're really being a problem solver first, and then a solution provider second. That's what I see it.
Yeah, no, good. So that's good. I like the way we're talking about it. So the the technology provider has to be able to adapt to both the process needs of the company as well as the maturity or the journey path that makes sense for the customer, right? So it's sort of a two types of adoption that need to be supported by their implementation methodology as well as their solutions and their customer success teams, all of that.
You know what? That's great. And I'm sharing this video because you've just laid out the three personas, I'm telling you, of understanding the client. But you become what you're talking about is becoming the ultimate problem solver. You are going in there and saying what works. At the end of the day, it isn't how we get there, but that we do get there. Yeah. And I think that's the thing that happens a lot. And that's why when I talk about stepping out behind the logo, you have to have some experience. You have to have some industry knowledge. You have to look beyond and not try to sort of fit them. And that's the agent-based approach versus the equation-based approach. You're understanding who's engaged. And I think that there's not enough of that still. But I think they're starting to realize that because, when the technology of the ERP era, as I talked the last time when we talked, continued to stumble and struggle with success ratios. The belief was, well, if we could buy it and work as easily as we can buy at home online and had all the tools and technology, that'll solve everything. Yet again, in 2019, before the pandemic, I'm using that example because the pandemic has changed the trajectory of a lot of approaches. But, the majority of CPOs were not satisfied with their digital transformation strategy. Hey, guess what? It's not a technology problem. Technology is a commodity now. Anybody's solution will work. Anybody's solution, maybe do it a little differently, but basically you don't have the same worries you did 10, 15, 20 years ago. The problem is, do people know how to step out from behind their technology and say, yes, technology is important, but I better solve your problem. And your problem may not necessarily be solved the same way as it is with one area or persona as it is with another. But that takes I think that takes a maturity, a confidence, and not getting caught up in building unicorns, for lack of a better word.
Yeah, right. And maybe that's what it means to be like a customer first solution provider, right? So you're a partner to the business. You're able to support them in the path that makes the most sense for them, as opposed to a slam dunk plug and play SaaS solution where nothing can change from end to end.
You know what? That is right on. That's right on. Three personas. Just you got the meteors hitting us and we better do something now. So whatever it takes. You got the other one saying, well, you know what? I got a piece of change agents in here who know where they can make improvements. Let's make little improvements at a time. Let's not try to swallow the whole elephant. And then the third area that you talk about, which I think is so very true, is victories are measured differently. You can be successful with getting somebody from A to B versus A to Z. And you're making an improvement, and you can graduate on that as well. So I think that's an interesting, a whole interest. I think that needs to be expressed, and people have to learn from that. So
maybe the fourth persona.
There's a fourth. There's a fourth.
Well, I think the fourth is specifically for the mid-market.
Okay.
Where there's an appetite for process change, and the solution provider can come in with leading practice, and they can just adopt it.
Right. So, okay, now you're dealing with the best of breed world, process change and everything.
Yeah, I mean, if someone's like, I know I need to do it, and I am willing to change, but I don't know how to do it. If you can be the one to tell them that, then I think I think you and I were talking about that. If I put on my startup man hat and think about that from the perspective of what can I do in the market. Well, if you're going into the mid-market and you can bring leading practices with effectiveness and efficiency and simplicity, I think that's a persona out there that's looking for help in the future.
See, I'm almost tempted, instead of calling it 4, to call it 2A and 2B.
Yeah, that's exactly
2A is like, we're going to make small little changes, the flywheel, or 2B, we got to make some process changes. But it's not going to be overarching, taking years and doing the big thing. What we're going to do is we're going to change process. We realize we've got to do something.
Yeah.
Interesting stuff.
I mean, that the nuance is the large enterprise is probably going to expect that you're able to adjust to their needs, and they probably might have some ideas of what leading practices are. And it's about bringing those two things together. And maybe the smaller organization doesn't have the wherewithal to be figuring that out.
Well, you know what, though? I think, and this ties back, the young fellow saying, how do I solve problems? How do I build a solution to solve problems? And in the end, he was saying, well, yeah, I think you're right. The agent base versus the equation base is better because I'm not just going in there and saying, here's your solution. Yeah. But the reality is, isn't that interesting, though, that the thought process starts out as being, okay, tell me what I need to do. Let's build a system. You're not building a system, you're solving a problem. Right. You're not building a solution, you're solving a problem. It all comes back to that. Listen, Bill, this is great stuff. And one of the things and the reasons I enjoy talking with you is, we have similar mindset, obviously. We're in violent agreement most of the time, but it challenges to stretch the boundaries of understanding so that I think when people are able to hear this, it changes things from punchlines and hot topics to deal with to something that says, okay, where are you? How many people do an assessment or an inventory of their prospective client personas? Or do they just go out there and say, I'm going after between 100 million and $2 billion business. That's my range. That's where we belong. I don't know. You see, I say, where are the problems? Show me where the problems are. And then we'll solve them for you because the technology is there. Unlike 10, 15 years ago, I think unlike any other time and with the advent of apps, the technology is there. I just think that there's not enough people knowing how to actually sell it. I mean, that may sound terrible and judgmental, but I just don't think, they're still doing the old way.
Well, I think this is interesting, right? So take a step back now and say, so if you're a seller or marketing a tech company, or if you're an enterprise that's looking for a solution and go into market, this is probably a conversation that those two should be having, which is, what kind of journey are you on?
Right.
Where are you now? Where do you want to? I mean, this should all be part of understanding and really being a connected partnership, right? If you can understand that kind of language and expectations and right up front, I think that helps both parties to communicate and to solve the problem together in a more aligned manner.
I agree. And you know what? And I'd say the responsibility, and you raise a very good point. The responsibility is not just the service providers, but it's on the part of the client not to abdicate their responsibility. Because oftentimes, how many times have you said, and we mentioned before, no one ever got fired for buying IBM. It may not be IBM, but that still mindset is still prevalent. It's like when I talked to a senior person of treasury at the Canadian government about a project, and I said, I have no idea how you're going to achieve the results you're reporting in the newspaper. And this senior person said, that may be true, but we dotted the I's, crossed the T's, and followed process. And that's what counts. It's like that's the way it goes. I mean, it's like this. So the practitioner has to have an involvement and a responsibility in this, but the provider doesn't want to say, okay, you actually have to do something. If the practitioner is sitting there saying, well, you do it for us, because then all of a sudden you end up in a scenario where, well, I'll lose the sale to somebody who'll say, yeah, we can come in and do it. Let's land the business first, worry about making it work later. So anyway, listen, Bill, this is great stuff. I'm sharing this. I'm tagging you. I want to introduce you to as many people as I know, because I think, these are the kinds of things that change the game. These are the kind of things. And I think, honestly, there should be some discussion. People should look at what you're saying and say, how do we bring this guy in to help us to do this? And that's what I really like about what you're talking about is there's a lot of, and the irony is there's a lot of places, a lot of practitioners who need to be fixed because their solutions aren't going. In fact, one final statistics I'll give to you that surprised me before we go is that during the pandemic, people looked at it, and there was a number of organizations that did some assessment. The majority of people have grown their platforms horizontally, of which they have many solutions, but only use maybe 10 to 15% of those solutions. And so what they're doing is they've taken this horizon view rather than building the practical view. of, of laying foundation. So this will address that as well. I mean, isn't that the old saying, those who don't learn from history are doomed to repeat it?
Yes, I love it.
So, all right. Well, listen, let's talk again next week. I enjoyed this very much. I'm tagging you on this. And again, I hope you're open for business where people can call you up and say, we want to hire that Bill guy because, he's making some sense here.
Well, it sounds like fun.
Okay. Take care, Bill.
Hey, it was good. Have a great weekend, John.
Take care. Bye.
All right. Cheers.